Thank you for this invitation, and it is such a blessing to be with you again today. I have been asked to speak about commitment, so I'd like to start with a short story. A pig and a chicken were walking down the road. As they passed a church, they noticed that a potluck charity breakfast was underway. Caught up in the spirit, the pig suggested to the chicken that they each contribute. Great idea, the chicken cried. Let's offer them ham and eggs. Not so fast, said the pig. For you, that's just a contribution. But for me, it's a total commitment. And now for a more serious look at my personal experiences and what Islam has to say about commitment. Islam means to achieve peace, peace with God, peace with oneself, and peace with the creations of God, through wholly submitting and committing oneself to God and accepting God's guidance over ego-driven desires, whims, and compulsions. The term Islam derives from the three-letter Arabic root sin, lam, mim, which obviously, if you think about it, salam, shalom to our Jewish brothers and sisters, which generates words which have interrelated meanings such as surrender, submission, commitment, devotion, and peace. God Almighty enjoins us to hold our commitments vigorously and dynamically. People throughout the ages have made commitments to God, various prophets, commitments to get married, to be good followers of their faith practice, commitments to college, and graduate school, and careers, and people make individual commitments to various people. In various places in the Holy Quran, we find that fulfilling a commitment has been made obligatory and highly emphasized. For example, in Surah Ma'idah, the table, verse 1, O you who believe, fulfill the obligations. Similarly, in Surah Al-Baqarah, the second surah of the Holy Quran, that means the cow, verse 177, it is righteousness to fulfill the commitments which you have made, and be firm and patient in pain or suffering and adversity and throughout all periods of panic. Many of the commitments we will make will require firmness in order to get through and turn that pain into purpose. Many of the commitments we made in life, such as raising a family or going to graduate school, was fraught with pain, adversity, and a great reward. In Surah Asaf, verses 2 and 3, O you who believe, why do you say that which you do not do? It is most hateful to God that you should say that which you do not do. God promises us a reward if we commit, and of course, the ultimate reward is paradise. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 40, and be faithful to your covenant with me, I will fulfill my covenant with you. The third type of promise is when people form actual commitments, covenants, and agreements. The verses and traditions state that it is an obligatory obligation to fulfill this type of promise, and it is a sin to go against them. In Surah Al-Isra, verse 34, and fulfill the promise. Surely every promise shall be questioned about. Similarly, the Quran describes truthful and pious people in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 177. Righteousness is not that you turn your faces toward the east or the west, but true righteousness is in one who believes in God, the last day, the angels, the books, and the prophets, and gives wealth in spite of love for it to relatives, orphans, the needy, the traveler, those who ask for help, and for freeing slaves, and who establishes prayer and gives alms, zakat, those who fulfill their promise when they promise, and those who are patient in poverty and hardship and during battle, Those are the ones who have been true, and it is those who are the righteous. Commitment is realized and actualized when we shift our focus to the action necessary to realize or materialize the verbal promise or ideal. Perhaps today we will benefit by looking at the commitments we made to God, our fellow man, and ourselves. Heidi Reeder, in her book, Commit to Win, says that commitment is the foundation of great accomplishments. Many great stories are about those who commit, those who show up, and they leave powerful legacies. Any goal, regardless of how much it's cherished or how earnestly it's developed, will make little progress unless it is supported by commitment. Without commitment, the goals we set for ourselves are mere dreams, ideas that don't have the footing to be realized. Just as motivation provides the energy to set goals and begin the journey, commitment provides the power to stick with it over time so that goals can be actualized. And I do take this quote from Dr. Reeder. Without commitment, Amelia Earhart would not have become the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. Without commitment, we wouldn't be able to enjoy all the Olympic athletes from all over the world coming together every 2 years, showing us both their physical and mental stamina at the very highest levels. Without commitment, a couple, the Fishers from James City, North Carolina, wouldn't have set the Guinness World Book of Records for 86 years of marriage. To achieve greatness in the areas that are important to us requires that we deeply invest ourselves and commit. And as we do that, realize that it shapes our lives for us and for those around us. What we often overlook are the ways in which all of our commitments, great or small, that we make actually do shape our lives. If you're here in this audience today, you made a simple, small commitment this morning to get out of bed. Congratulate yourself on that commitment that you made today. It might have been difficult, but it doesn't require a lot of reflection. However, there are some commitments in our lives that really do require a lot of thought and reflection. I am thinking particularly about our lives, self-personalization and actualization at work, worship, and in love with family and our significant others. I want to share with you a very surprising and startling Gallup poll about how engaged people are with their jobs. According to this Gallup poll, only 13% of those surveyed classified themselves as being psychologically committed to their job, meaning that they go there excited to be there, putting everything they have into their work. On the other side, this study presented 24% who hate their jobs and don't want to be there. Actually, they're the ones that are active saboteurs working against the goals of the organization, and I certainly hope none of you work with any of those people. What I find particularly fascinating is that actually the majority of folks, 2/3, say that they're not engaged. They are committed enough to go to work day in and day out, but are just going through the motions. These are interesting statistics alone, but because we spend so much time at work, it is still shaping our lives in so many ways. And of course, there can't be anybody that's just going through the motions in a relationship, right? We know the divorce statistics, and I think as a marriage and family therapist, that creates an interesting trend in terms of cohabitation. A lot of people are doing this today, and for some very interesting reasons that show us a few things about commitment. Now, I want to make it very clear that there's no judgment intended here. The culture of Islam Inc. is to start every meeting with a radical welcome and invite attendees to share our no judgment, no castigation, no criticizing, no indicting, but inviting, nurturing, accepting, affirming, loving, and empowering community. And I bring that with me today. What the data is saying is that people who cohabitate before they marry are statistically significantly more likely to later divorce. And that is very interesting and surprises a lot of people. These findings intrigue researchers too, and they begin to ask why this is occurring. And the answer seems to lie at least somewhat in why people decide to move in together without marrying in the first place. When researchers asked, there were two big reasons that people shared. Well, it was easy. My toothbrush was there, so why shouldn't I be? The rent was cheaper. We just kind of did it. And the second one was that some considered it a test. I'm not sure how committed I am long-term to this relationship, so we will try it out and see how it goes. The issue seems to be, though, that even if couples don't pass the test, and it turns out that they are not super well matched for each other, they often end up marrying anyway. The issue seems to be what researchers call sliding versus deciding. Sometimes we commit because we have really made a conscious decision to do so in marriage and otherwise. And sometimes we do it because we were investing more and more in something and we started cutting off other choices, and all of a sudden we found ourselves committed to something that maybe wasn't so right, and then we begin to question it. So whether in romantic relationships or at work, there are all kinds of areas in our lives that we can think about this and how commitment shapes our lives, whether we are really thoughtful about it or whether we do it unconsciously. Ultimately, the good news is we do get to choose. All kinds of commitments shape our lives, the constructive ones and the destructive ones, the ones we think about, the ones we don't think about, the large ones or the small ones, all of them shape our lives in different ways. Ultimately, the power is we get to make that choice if we decide to stop and look at our lives and say, what am I committed to and what am I really deeply committed to? Things we might want to commit to all come with choice points. Am I really going to commit to this? And then I have really got to get it done right. Or am I going to just keep doing what I have always done and getting what I have always got? I call that automatic pilot. My life is nice. I'm passionate about counseling and chaplaincy and public speaking. I've been married 35 years. I have a good life. I don't really have to have this. But those are the moments we really have to say, what do I really want? What do I really want to commit to? When I made that commitment, several things happened. It shaped my life for 35 years and shapes my life today as I am with you. Even the people's lives around us are shaped by our commitment or commitments. Commitment isn't just a word, it's a real process. And I'll never forget when I was living on the second floor of an apartment in Los Angeles, California, I needed to have a side-by-side refrigerator and a sleeper sofa moved. And so in my morning prayers at the mosque, I asked for volunteers. And many people committed, but not many people showed up. So the way to find out if people are truly committed is ask them to move a side-by-side refrigerator or a sleeping sofa. A plan is required to create and develop commitment within yourself. We don't just say we are committed, and we are. How many people say that? Oh yeah, I'm committed. Some volunteers show up. They said they would show up, and some don't. Commitment isn't just a word, it's a process. How do we actually create commitment within ourselves? How do we actually develop it? Well, we know that sometimes it requires a plan, and part of that plan is the need to let go of other less important commitments, and that is challenging, to let go of other important commitments, to prioritize your commitments. It is a tough process to let go. Is commitment the same thing as a promise or an obligation? Here is the definition that I use from social psychology. Commitment is the experience of being psychologically attached to something and intending to continue. This is what shapes our lives, being psychologically attached. Not an obligation, not like, sure, I'm committed, not even a promise. So we ask ourselves today, what are we psychologically attached to? And of course, this is a matter of degrees. A lot of people think of commitment as an on or off kind of thing. You are either committed or you're not. And how many times have we heard that? But there are levels of commitment. I can have a low level of commitment, or I can have something between, like those 2/3 of the workers that are going to work but are not going with their full selves. Because levels of commitment can vary, the question is there a way that we can increase commitment within ourselves to the things that matter most and that will shape our lives in positive and constructive ways and ultimately get us to paradise? And then are there ways that we can learn to let go of the commitments that are holding us back, or in some cases are really quite hurtful to us? And I think the answer to that question is yes. Many, many years of scholarly research has found 4 factors, in particular, that when we consider them together have a highly predictive value in terms of how committed we will be to God, our jobs, relationships, communities, health practices, sports teams, and various goals. We can use these 4 factors in a way that we can empower ourselves with the commitments that are going to shape our lives. How can I have a role in the commitments that materialize in my life and not just that commitment just happen to me? The first 2 factors of the 4 that predict commitment, according to social psychology research, and I'm using Dr. Reeder's terms, and the first 2 words are treasures and troubles. And the reason she puts these 2 together is we really have to consider them. Is the cost-benefit analysis hard to think about one without the other? So for a moment, I want you to think about a commitment in your life. What do you treasure about it? What are the benefits? What do you value about it? What kind of meaning does it bring to you? And now I want you to take a moment to counterbalance that with how troubling it is. What are the problems and what are the difficulties? What are the things and varying troubles I have to put up with if I make this commitment to go for the gold medal? We analyze this and say, I don't know if I want to continue and commit or not, because satisfaction is a major predictor of commitment. It isn't the only thing. You are satisfied, you stay. You are not satisfied, you go. It is thankfully not that simple, but satisfaction is a huge predictor of commitment. I'm reminded of a story of a renowned, successful news anchor who had her first baby. And so she began to think, I spent my whole life wanting to be a news anchor. I worked second shift, didn't have a social life. I gave up all these things to be an anchor, and now I want to be with my baby. So she began to look at contributions. She looked at her satisfaction, the treasures and the troubles, and how much she contributed. We do this consciously and unconsciously. Piles of research from so many fields say the more you invest in something, your time, your energy, your talent, your creativity, your love, your heart, even sharing who you are as you go through the process, you become more and more committed for good or bad. And this is what happened to that mother that I was thinking about. She'd gone to school, she'd taken internships, she'd volunteered, she'd taken state exams. And how could she let that go? She was really, really troubled. Can you just let it go? We can let it go, and we don't have to let our sunk costs influence the rest of our lives. And that means that the last factor is the choice. Choices are something that can take away from our commitment. We usually think of choices as a good thing, and often they are. But if you want commitment, other choices are actually a bad thing for you. Because if you see a lot of other really attractive options, you will often think you have other options or choices. She was trained for her specific career commitment, and she might be deluded to believe there is nothing else she can do. But when that mother decided to open her eyes and consider some things, she realized that the skills she had learned as a professional journalist were actually skills that could be applied to a lot of other jobs. And she ended up in this new inspiring field that complemented her new choice to be at home in the evenings with her baby. She figured out a way, knowing that commitment would shape her life. She committed to how did she wanted to shape her commitments. She figured out a way, knowing what commitment would shape her life. She committed to how did she want to shape her commitments. Here's the whole commitment equation put together, and I didn't make this up either. The level of our commitment is dictated to a large extent by how much we treasure something, minus how troubling it is, plus what we have contributed, minus the other good choices that we see. We know that commitment is going to shape our lives in significant ways. So why don't we shape our commitments in significant ways and create a life truly valued by committing to a higher purpose? And so I leave you with that charge today. And I close by saying that I love you all in this cause, and I hope to be with you again soon. Thank you.